Hak was a pathetic, hopeless fighting geek who got rizzed by the hot princess, but she was drooling over someone else. One day, that someone isekai'd her father, so Hak set out to save her and help her find the strongest warriors to take back the crown and in the process Rizz her. This is the land of Kuka, a small kingdom led by a gentle king. But there's a major problem. He has no queen and no prince to take over the throne. His only child is a 15-year-old girl named Yona, the princess. Because Kuka is such a tiny nation, nearby countries often look at it as an easy target, so battles are usually expected. Yet strangely, ever since the old king died 10 years ago, everything has stayed completely calm and peaceful. Yona was supposed to show up at a royal event honoring the king, but she skipped it just because she couldn't decide what to wear. While the ceremony wrapped up without her, Yona was too busy worrying about how her hair looked. Although her father always told her she was beautiful, she couldn't figure out why her hair had to be bright red and super curly. One of the 5 top generals, a guy named Hak, popped in and joked about her hair. He could get away with teasing her because they'd known each other since they were kids. He was basically the only one who talked to her like a normal person. Hak told Yona that their childhood friend Suwon would be arriving soon. The second she heard that, Yona ran off to meet him. Suwon, who was 3 years older than her, had also been close with Yona since they were little. He was visiting the palace for her birthday and planned to stay for a whole week. After meeting up with her briefly, Suwon left to say hi to the king. Yona stayed behind, feeling a little grumpy because Suwon still treated her like a little girl. Yona had always been sad about losing her mom when she was young, and back then, Suwon promised to fill that emotional gap. Since then, she had always kept him close in her heart. The next day, she heard that Suwon and Hak were having an archery match, so she ran over to watch. Seeing Suwon in action made her want to learn how to shoot arrows too. But her dad didn't like the idea of his daughter touching weapons at all. Out of nowhere, Suwon invited Yona to go horseback riding, and she happily agreed. Hak helped her get on the horse, and while riding, Yona noticed that Suwon seemed smooth around girls. It made her wonder if he had lots of admirers. In fact, Suwon had received many marriage offers before, but he had always turned them down. Trying to act more grown-up, Yona blurted out that she had already agreed to marry Hak. Hak was caught totally off guard and had no idea what she was talking about. Suwon congratulated them anyway, which confused Yona even more. Why would he believe that? Later, Yona went to speak with her father. She realized he wasn't okay with her marrying Suwon. Even though Suwon was talented and carried royal blood as the son of the king's older brother, the king still refused to hand over the throne that way. He confessed he was a coward, but he didn't want Yona to go through the same pain her mother had suffered. Upset, Yona stormed off, but then, a creepy stranger suddenly appeared and started chasing her. Terrified, she ran. Thankfully, Suwon showed up and saved her. Yona explained what happened, but when Suwon looked around, there was no one in sight. Trying to calm her down, Suwon said they should go find Hak. He assumed they were engaged, but Yona finally opened up and told him the truth. She only had feelings for him. Suwon didn't know how to respond. He admitted it was hard for him to stop seeing her as a little kid, even though he knew she was growing up. That moment meant the world to Yona. She didn't know anything about politics or ruling, but she did know one thing: she still loved Suwon with all her heart. 5 days later, Yona's birthday party was held. During the event, Suwon gave her a beautiful hairpin. She thought her red hair didn't match something so elegant, but Suwon told her he liked her hair the way it was. For the first time, Yona actually felt proud of it. Before the celebration could continue, Hak walked in and interrupted. Yona went back to her room, and Hak warned Suwon that something felt off. He suspected an intruder had snuck into the palace. When he learned that Yona had been attacked earlier, he asked Suwon to look after her while he tightened security. That night, Yona went to speak with her father again about Suwon. But when she got to his chambers, something was seriously wrong. The door was open, there were no guards, and inside, she found a horrifying scene. Her father had been murdered, and the one who did it was none other than Suwon himself. While that happened, Hak was on duty and ran into Minsu, one of the king's guards. They chatted about Yona and Suwon. Meanwhile, Yona was being secretly dragged away to be executed, but Hak showed up just in time and saved her. Yona was still in disbelief that Suwon could do something so cruel, but the truth was, Suwon had been waiting for this moment for years. His soldiers thought things weren't too bad yet, since most people didn't know what had happened. Their only concern was Hak. Hak found some suspicious men and demanded answers. When they attacked, he didn't hesitate to fight back. Around the same time, Suwon finally told Yona why he did it. He believed her father had always been a coward for avoiding war. While many saw him as gentle, Suwon believed the country couldn't be strong under such a ruler. 10 years ago, when the old king was meant to name an heir, instead of giving the crown to his older son, Suwon's dad, he gave it to his younger brother, Yona's father. Suwon's father was fine with that and even went to the battlefield to protect his brother. But in the end, Yona's father betrayed and killed him. Suwon never wanted to hurt Yona. He figured she never visited the king's chambers and wouldn't witness anything. But a man named Kai Suk appeared and decided Yona had seen too much. He wanted to get rid of her. In a panic, Yona knocked over a candle and started a fire. While everyone was distracted trying to put it out, she escaped. Still unable to believe the truth, Yona was caught again, but Hak showed up and rescued her once more. Hak had started suspecting something when he noticed new unfamiliar faces among the palace guards. So he asked Suwon what was really going on. Yona was incredibly relieved Hak still had her back. The king had given him one order: protect Yona at all costs. When Hak asked where the king was, he learned that Suwon had killed him. Furious, Hak charged at Suwon, demanding to know why. How could someone who didn't even want the throne murder a king who hated war? Suwon believed Kuka needed a ruler with strength, not kindness. Kai Suk knew how dangerous Hak was, so they took Yona hostage to make Hak surrender. Surrounded and outnumbered, Hak dropped his weapon, but right then, an arrow flew in and gave him an opening to escape with Yona. Minsu was the one who fired the arrow. He joined them, and Hak asked him to take care of Yona while he went ahead to fight. The three of them hid but couldn't find a clear way out. Minsu came up with a plan. Since no one knew where his loyalties lay, he wore Yona's cloak and ran outside to act as bait. The guards fell for it, and while they chased after Minsu, Hak and Yona slipped away. Sadly, Minsu was shot by arrows and badly wounded. The two escaped into the forest, and Suwon sent men to find them. He didn't think they'd succeed since Hak knew the woods better than anyone, but they still had to try. Hak let Yona rest that night under the stars. The next morning, people around the country began to notice things changing. Suwon still hadn't received any news. Meanwhile, Hak and Yona decided to leave the forest behind. Hak knew they could survive anywhere as long as Yona was still alive. Yona too hoped Hak would never leave her side. He held her close to comfort her, and together they began a journey. They would go on to meet powerful allies and prepare to someday take their kingdom back. And this is how their adventure begins. After spending several days hiding deep in the forest, Hak started to notice something. Yona was getting weaker. She had never gone through tough times before. Her body wasn't used to pain, hunger, or exhaustion. Long ago, Hak had grown up as the grandson of a respected general. Because of that, the king had once offered Hak the chance to become a general someday, but Hak turned him down. He didn't like the politics of royalty or how nobles always backstab each other. Plus, he didn't want to be near Yona. Every time she was around, Hak felt like he lost control of himself. Back then, while Hak was trying to stay away from her, Yona suddenly came running to him. She was hiding behind him, clearly upset. It turned out she had just been harassed by a guy named Taejunthi, son of the Fire Tribe's chief. At that moment, Hak realized Yona had feelings for Suwon. She thought it was just a one-sided crush and never told anyone. After that, Hak left and asked his grandfather to take him home, but the old man refused. So Yona found Hak on her own and said sorry for acting like a coward and upsetting him. She even brought him some fruit to make peace. While Hak was nearby, he overheard some guards gossiping that the king was holding himself back from using his full power. Right after, he saw Taejun bothering Yona again. This time, it went too far, and Hak had to step in. He acted like he and Yona were really close, just to get Taejun to back off. After that, Hak decided to become her personal bodyguard. He told everyone that he was the next leader of the Wind tribe. Soon, the king himself showed up. He supported Hak's decision and trusted him to protect Yona. That was when Hak started to realize that the king wasn't weak at all. The man was even willing to grab Taejun's sword to stop him, injuring his own hand to protect his daughter. Hak thought back to the time when the queen had passed away. Both Yona and the king were heartbroken. Even though she was hurting, Yona tried to stay strong to be there for her dad. Suwon and Hak also tried to cheer her up by playing in the snow, but they went overboard and Yona ended up getting sick. She wanted her dad to visit her, but the royal doctor said the king was too busy. Later, both Suwon and Hak got sick too, so Hak's grandfather came to check on them. Suwon said he wanted to be like Hak's grandpa someday, a great general. Hak explained he was just an orphan raised by his grandfather. When Suwon's father came to see him, Yona felt sad that her dad still hadn't come. People thought maybe the king was scared to catch the illness, even from his own daughter. But Hak defended the king, saying that even though he loved his daughter, the country always came first for him. Hearing that made Yona stop blaming her father. That night, she got hungry again, and Suwon sent someone to bring her food. The porridge was awful, but then the king walked in and admitted he made it himself. He was sorry for not coming sooner. Even though the porridge tasted bad, Yona finished every bite because it came from her dad. Back then, Yona had wished that both Hak and Suwon would always stay by her side. But now, all she had left were painful memories. The sky she once shared with them now felt empty and distant. Hak could tell that Yona wasn't just physically weak anymore, her heart was breaking. She was like a ghost of her former self. That made Hak hate Suwon even more for destroying the Yona he once knew. One night, Hak found the hairpin Suwon had given Yona and decided to keep it. When Yona noticed it was missing, she searched for it, but couldn't find it. She tried to throw away her feelings for Suwon, but they still clung to her. When she wandered into the woods, a poisonous snake appeared. Hak rushed in and pulled her out safely. Realizing how much the hairpin meant to her, he gave it back. It was the only thing keeping her spirit alive. They continued to survive in the forest. Yona saw that Hak had been bitten, but he shrugged it off like it was nothing. She didn't know where they could go. Villages might have soldiers waiting. So Hak decided to head to his hometown. When they arrived at the Wind Tribe village, the people were surprised to see Hak return. They had no idea who Yona really was and assumed she was his girlfriend. Hak asked them to bring food for Yona and checked where his grandfather was. The villagers told him that the palace had called all 5 former generals to attend a meeting, but no one seemed to know about the king's death yet. At the same time, the 5 generals had gathered. The Fire Tribe leader accused Hak of killing the king and kidnapping the princess. Suwon didn't blame Hak, but he also didn't confess to killing the king either. He said that right now, the tribes needed to stick together to stop enemy invasions. Everyone else agreed that Suwon should become the next ruler except for Hak's grandfather, who stayed silent, saying he wasn't a general anymore. If they wanted an opinion, they should ask Hak. Kai-suk warned the old man that staying silent might be seen as treason. He had treated Suwon like his own grandson in the past, so now he chose not to speak. Suwon then said the coronation would take place in 3 days and invited him to attend. Later that day, it was revealed that the Fire Tribe leader had secretly supported Suwon's rise to power. They believed Hak wouldn't fight back because of Yona's safety. Meanwhile, they started preparing troops to suppress the Wind Tribe. Back in the village, Yona met a boy named Yun, who was like a little brother to Hak. Yun asked if Yona and Hak were together, but she said they were just friends. The boys teased Hak for getting rejected. Hak told Yona the fake story he had spread. She was supposedly a palace maid who got fired for messing up her job. An older woman heard the rumor and decided to teach Yona how to work properly. She gave her laundry duty. Later, Hak helped her out, and while working, they found out the village's stream had dried up. Hak sent people to check upstream. Just then, his grandfather returned and was happy to see Yona again. Soon after, a man named Hang came back wounded. He said the Fire Tribe had blocked the water supply. Hak's grandfather stopped anyone from fighting back, knowing it was pressure to force him to support Suwon. He had already made up his mind he wouldn't let Suwon become king. If Hak showed up, he'd just be called a murderer. That evening, Taejin reappeared, still jealous that Hak had gotten in his way before. Yona was lost in thought when Yun came to get her for dinner, but he collapsed. Hak and his grandfather explained that Yun had always been sick and needed medicine often. Just then, they heard that a merchant group had been attacked, meaning no supplies were coming. Everyone knew this was the Fire Tribe's doing. Hang offered to find a doctor for Yun, and Hak gave him permission, telling the villagers not to cause trouble. Their army was smaller, and the Fire Tribe now had royal backing. Later, Hak met with Yona in private. She wondered what she could do now. Hak told her to stay in the village and live a quiet life. Then Hak met his grandfather and asked him to approve Suwon's coronation and retake his general title. Hak said he'd leave the tribe so they wouldn't be targeted. He knew he'd be branded a traitor, but he didn't care. He also wanted Yona to stay and live peacefully, but his grandfather refused. So Hak used his tribe leader rights and ordered it himself. That night, Hak visited the blacksmith, picked up weapons, and said goodbye to old friends. Meanwhile, Hang returned with medicine and saved Yun. The next day, Yona visited the caravan that had been attacked. She realized she was putting innocent people in danger, so she made her choice. She would leave. She went to look for Hak and found out he had already said goodbye to Yun. Yun cried, and Yona thanked him for everything. Yun realized she was leaving too. He had promised Hak he would look after her, but now she was gone. At the village gate, Hak reunited with his old squad and said farewell. He told them to look after Yona, but just as he was about to leave, Yona showed up and said she was coming with him. Hak told her to stay back and live a normal life, but she refused. Hak said he wasn't her general anymore. If she wanted his protection, she'd have to pay him. Since she had nothing, he used that as an excuse to get her to stay. But then his grandfather raised his bow ready to shoot Hak if he didn't stop disrespecting Yona. In the end, his grandfather accepted her choice and let her go. Around that time, Taejun heard someone had found Hak and Yona's location and he set out to chase them down. While this was going on, Hak and Yona were following the advice of Hak's grandfather. He had told them to search for an old priest, a man who once guided the former king. But after losing faith in the king's choices, the priest had vanished from society and chosen to live far away from people. Their journey led them into a quiet, rugged mountain region. It was a rough place to stay, and Hak warned that nighttime here would be freezing and uncomfortable. Yona, trying to stay warm, said she'd sleep close to Hak, but he joked that he couldn't promise she'd get much rest that way. Suddenly, Hak heard something. He pulled Yona aside and told her to hide. There were enemies nearby. A moment later, they were surrounded by soldiers from Taejin's unit. Taejun hadn't expected to find them so quickly in this remote place. Hak, calm as ever, said that he was no longer part of the Wind Tribe's army. So whatever he did now had nothing to do with them. Taejun didn't care. He told his men to attack. But Hak fought them off with ease, taking down every soldier that charged at him. When archers started shooting from a distance, Hak picked up Yona and escaped, slicing through incoming arrows as they ran. Yona lost her balance and tripped, and Hak shielded her with his own body, taking a poisoned arrow to the back. Still, he kept going and fled with her. Later that afternoon, they managed to lose the soldiers chasing them. But Hak knew they weren't done. He told Yona to hide and decided to take the enemies head-on. Surrounded again, Hak fought bravely, but the poison was starting to spread through his body. Yona, hiding nearby, saw it happen. She realized the arrow had been poisoned and that Hak was in serious danger. At first, she stayed back, scared of messing things up. But then it hit her. She just stayed hidden and let Hak protect her all the time. She might as well have stayed safe in the Wind Tribe village. So she rushed out and attacked the archer who had shot Hak. Then she came face to face with Taejun. He offered to take her back with him and even said they could take down Suwon together. But Yona refused. If he already knew the awful things Suwon had done, why did he keep supporting him? Why did he let the Wind Tribe suffer? She called Taejun a hypocrite and said she would never go with him. Taejun was stunned. This wasn't the weak princess he remembered. She was bold now, her red hair blazing like fire. Her presence burned into him. Hak scolded her for coming out again, but it was too late. His body was giving out. The poison was overpowering him, and he could barely stand. Still, he kept fighting until he was slashed by an enemy and knocked back toward a cliff. He held onto the edge, barely hanging on. Yona ran to help, but Taejun grabbed her hair to stop her. Without hesitating, Yona grabbed a sword and cut her own hair to break free. She rushed to save Hak with the blade in her hand. Taejun told his men not to hurt her, so they didn't stop her. Yona got to Hak and tried to pull him up, but she wasn't strong enough. Both of them ended up falling off the cliff together. Taejun ordered his men to search the bottom, but most of the soldiers believed there was no way either of them survived. Later that night, Taejun returned to Suwon and handed him a lock of Yona's hair that he had managed to hold onto. Taejun explained everything and truly believed Yona was gone for good. Originally, Kaisuk had only planned to capture Yona and bring her back, but now things had gone off track. Taejun begged Suwon to punish him for this failure, but Suwon simply turned away and said nothing. Meanwhile, out in the forest, someone had found Yona and Hak. As this happened, the day of Suwon's coronation arrived. Kaisuk announced that Hak's grandfather and the newly appointed general were attending. Suwon wanted to meet them himself. As he prepared, Suwon remembered the old days show Hak would always be standing nearby whenever he came to visit Yona. He had admired Hak's strength and had once wished Hak would serve as his personal guard. In fact, Hak had even joked that Suwon should marry Yona and become king. But Suwon had always hesitated, knowing that if he ever took the throne, he'd have to give up his bond with both Yona and Hak. Now, he had chosen power over everything else. At the ceremony, Suwon looked around at the leaders of the tribes. The Fire Tribe still served loyally but clearly wanted the throne for themselves. The Earth Tribe only followed whoever was in charge. The Water Tribe was just waiting for the right moment to grab power. And the Wind Tribe had strong fighters trained by Hak's grandfather Ons who might rebel one day. But to defend Kuka from outside threats, Suwon knew he had to unite all the tribes under one banner. Hak's grandfather asked Suwon what he had given up to take the crown. Suwon replied that he would bring back Kuka's strength and restore its glory not through blessings from gods, but through the strength of its people. And anyone who got in his way, he would crush them. Hak's grandfather couldn't tell when Suwon had changed so much. Meanwhile, Yona slowly woke up. She was alive, and a boy named Yoon had been the one to save her and Hak. Yoon explained that Hak had gotten really hurt while protecting her, and if help had arrived any later, he might not have made it. Yona soon met another person, Iksu, the priest they had been searching for. He acted a little odd, so Yona wasn't sure if she should tell him who she really was. But he already knew. And from what Yun said, Yona realized this man really was the priest Hak's grandfather mentioned. Iksu explained that his role was to speak the words of the gods to the people. But Yun thought that was exactly why he got kicked out of the capital, because his divine messages didn't sit well with the royal family. Yona was curious to know more. Yun realized she had grown up in the palace, yet knew nothing of the world outside. Later, Hak began to move, but Yun told Yona that he was still running a high fever and would need time to heal. Yun wasn't a doctor, so he warned her not to expect too much. He also pointed out that Yona had never even thanked Hak for saving her life. That was one of the reasons Yun didn't like royalty. They took everything for granted. Iksu, however, reassured Yona that the god of death hadn't come for Hak yet. Later on, Yona asked Iksu why he had chosen to live so far away. Iksu said he just went along with life and believed everything happened for a reason. That night, Yuna thanked Yun for rescuing her and asked about their past. Yoon said he wasn't anything special, just someone who looked after that clumsy old priest. In the past, priests were treated like divine messengers. They could start wars, stop kings, and influence entire kingdoms. They even had the authority to remove rulers if the gods were displeased. Because of that, the royal family viewed them as dangerous. It was Soo-won's father who had banished Ik-soo, fearing that he'd interfere with the king's rule. Yoon brought Ik-soo to live out here because Ik-soo was too kind for the world. He always gave everything to help others, even when it hurt him. That's how they ended up in this remote area. Later that night, Yona realized Hak was missing. She panicked and ran into the woods, calling his name until he returned. He had just gone to get his sword. Yona burst into tears, upset that he didn't tell her. Hak, covered in injuries, asked her if she'd cried this much if he ever died. Yona told him not to leave her again. As Hak moved closer, their heads bumped. Yona thought he was checking her temperature and offered her forehead, and Hak just played along, knowing she was still innocent in love. Hak also apologized for the fact she had to cut her hair, but Yona said she never cared about it much anyway. She didn't regret it. Still, Hak noticed something: she hadn't thrown away Soo-won's hairpin. She was holding on to it even now. The next day, Hak finally understood where they were staying. It was Ik-soo's home. Later on, Yana went to speak with Ik-soo. He asked her if she wanted to hear the will of the gods. Hak's grandfather had once told her to find this man to figure out which road she should take in life. But after all that had happened, Yona didn't care about destiny anymore. She just wanted a quiet life with Hak. Ik-soo, however, told her that she wasn't meant for peace. He said she was the storm that would shake the entire country. Soon after, Yun and Hak showed up, and Ik-soo began to recite a legend that had been passed down for generations. He told them of a prophecy: when the 4 dragons come together again, the true king would rise. Hak didn't really believe in myths, but the story had to be told. It went like this. Long ago, a powerful dragon god gave up his divine form and became human. As the Crimson Dragon King, he founded the kingdom of Kuka. But humans eventually betrayed him and took everything away. Before he was completely lost, 4 dragon spirits came to his side. They wanted to destroy all of humanity, but the Crimson Dragon King begged them to forgive the people. So instead, they passed their powers into 4 human warriors to protect him. One of them had claws that could rip through anything. One had eyes that saw through all lies and illusions. One had legs so strong he could leap into the sky. And one had a body as tough as steel. These 4 warriors built the foundations of the current tribes and protected the Crimson Dragon King until the day he died. After his death, they disappeared and were never seen again. Ik-soo believed those 4 bloodlines still existed somewhere, passed down through time. He warned Yona that she couldn't rely on Hak alone. No matter how strong he was, he couldn't protect her forever. She would need new allies. Her next step was to find the people who carry the dragon blood. Even if it sounded like an old tale, Ik-soo said the fact that Yona had survived so many dangers proved that her life was tied to something much greater. The gods had shown her the path. Now it was her turn to walk it. That night, Yona sat alone thinking. She held the hairpin Soo-won had given her, trying to convince herself to throw it away. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't let it go. Later, she met with Hak. He asked if she truly wanted to chase after this dragon warrior story. Yona had already made up her mind. She wanted to find them. But she didn't want to be a burden anymore. She asked Hak to teach her how to fight. Hak agreed, but only because she was serious. Ik-soo then made a request. He asked them to take Yuna along on their journey. Yuna agreed to join, and even made Yona a brand new outfit. He also cut her hair shorter to match her new life. Yona noticed how talented he was. Yun seemed to know everything. He said he had a sharp memory and could remember anything after reading it once. That's how he learned so much, so he could take care of Ik-soo. But Yun made one thing clear: he wasn't doing this for free. He told Yona to send the bill to Hak's grandfather. That's when Yun realized something. Hak's grandfather wasn't just some old man. He was a legendary hero, as famous as Soo-won's father. But to Yona, he was just a kind grandpa who loved kids. Yun admitted his dream was to collect books from all over the world. But when Yona went to speak with Ik-soo again, she told him she couldn't take Yun along. She felt guilty about pulling the two apart since they were like family. Yun overheard her. Later, he confronted Ik-soo, asking why he didn't stop her. Ik-soo said he didn't want to hold Yun back anymore. He wanted Yun to go out into the world, live his own life, and grow. Besides, Ik-soo was sure he could manage on his own. Feeling torn, Yun looked at an old medical book Ik-soo had once brought back for him. He considered burning it, but he couldn't. Around then, Hak showed up and started roasting some fish. Yun asked him why he always risked his life for Yona, but never cared for himself. Hak said it was simply protecting the only person who truly mattered to him. Later, Yun went to the waterfall and remembered his past. He had grown up in a poor fire tribe village. Every day, he had to steal just to survive. One day, he tried robbing a traveler, but the man had nothing on him. That man turned out to be Ik-soo. Even after getting attacked, Ik-soo was kind and gentle. Yun felt guilty and let him stay in his small home for the night. Later, Yun treated Iksu's injuries the ones he had caused himself. The next morning, Iksu gave Yun a sweet potato for breakfast. Yun soon found out that Iksu had traded his own shoes to get it. That simple act of kindness stunned him. Iksu told him that not everyone in the world was selfish. He said he didn't visit the capital often but liked helping people. Yun wanted nothing more than to go to the capital, study, and start over. Iksu promised to help him chase that dream. He also taught Yun how to make straw sandals, a skill that Yun later used to survive. Eventually, Iksu left but Yun never forgot him. Years later, they met again. Iksu had searched for books for Yun but couldn't find any. He came to visit one last time before disappearing from the world, but Yun couldn't let him go. He decided to follow him, take care of him, and stay by his side. From that day on, they were always together. Later, Iksu gave Yun a pair of straw sandals he had made himself. They looked terrible, but it was a kind gesture. Yun, in return, gave Iksu a better pair. Seeing Iksu stand on his own, even shakily, made Yun realize Iksu would be okay. So finally, Yun made up his mind. If Iksu was fine alone, then it was okay for him to go with Yona. Not long after, the group got ready to travel. Hak, seeing all the luggage Yun was carrying, raised an eyebrow. Yun waved goodbye to Iksu, who promised to live well. Yun promised to come back and visit. As they walked, Hak slowly started to accept that Yun was part of their team now. Meanwhile, Su-won had begun cleaning up the corruption in the palace. He had found out which nobles were greedy and had Kai-suk deal with them. Because Yona's father had avoided conflict, shady people had taken advantage. Su-won intended to root out every one of them. Later, he came across a book about the Crimson Dragon King. He remembered old stories but decided this kingdom didn't need some fantasy king, it needed action and results. Back on the road, Yona and her group were headed toward the border of the empire. Aku had told them that the people who carried the dragon blood often lived far from towns and were hard to find. But there was one hidden tribe believed to protect their bloodline. That mountain village would be their first stop. Hak grew anxious whenever they passed strangers, afraid someone might recognize Yona. But the chances were low. Yona also didn't want him to stress so much, he still hadn't fully healed, and she wanted to see the outside world with her own eyes. They stopped in a small village to rest and eat. Hak went to buy supplies and told Yun and Yona to run if anything happened. They agreed to meet at the big tree nearby. Hak visited a weapon shop and bought a bow for himself. He saw a dagger that might suit Yona but didn't buy it. He still believed he could protect her alone. Meanwhile, Yona found out that Su-won had officially become king. She was relieved to hear that Hak's grandfather and the Wind tribe were still doing fine. The shopkeeper asked if she wanted anything else, but she had already walked away. Yun ended up having to pay and chased after her. He found her looking rattled. Then they spotted soldiers from the Fire tribe and quickly hid. Hak found them and told them they needed to leave fast. On the road, they overheard rumors. People said the taxes had gone down since Su-won took over, but there were Fire tribe troops everywhere now. Yun liked traveling through forests, it meant less chance of being spied on by government forces. Yona asked Hak again to teach her how to fight. He said no. He asked if she could really raise a weapon against someone. Yona said no, but she didn't want to hurt anyone. She just wanted to learn how to run away if things got dangerous. So Hak handed her a bow. He told her she could support him from behind during battles. If they weren't on the road, he'd make her fire 200 arrows every day to train. He also wanted her to think deeply about why her father had never allowed her to touch weapons. Yona began practicing by trying to hit birds and rabbits' butt for an entire hour. She didn't land a single shot. Hak showed her how it's done, but when she asked how he did it, he couldn't really explain. Some people are just naturally good at it. Yona thought Hak didn't know how to teach, but in reality, her biggest issue was strength. She didn't yet have the muscle to properly pull the bowstring. Once she got stronger, she'd learn faster. Still, she kept practicing day and night, trying to make her arrows fly straight. Yun noticed that her hands had become scratched and raw, but she didn't give up. Yun knew a little about archery too, but he had never used it. He believed you shouldn't pick up a weapon unless you were truly ready to take a life. Fighting without resolve was too dangerous. The reason Hak was still alive was because he never hesitated and never showed mercy to his enemies. The next morning, the group continued walking toward their destination. Along the way, Yona suddenly stopped. She had spotted a wild boar nearby and wanted to shoot it. She had come to understand something important. When you hold a weapon, it means you're prepared to take something, maybe even a life. Her father would never have approved of that mindset, but she knew now that it was necessary for survival. Yona took aim and fired, but the arrow missed. Hak told Yun to go on ahead and then turned back to Yona. He explained that she still didn't have the intent to kill. She could hit targets, sure, but not living ones. To help her understand, he asked her to shoot at him, imagining he was her enemy. Hak was confident he'd dodge any shot. Yona gave it a try. Then, Hak said, "Pretend I'm Su-won." That single name changed everything. Yona released another arrow. It narrowly scraped Hak's face. Hak realized she had potential but still needed more training. More than that, He didn't want her to carry the weight of trying to protect him. That was his job. They kept walking and eventually noticed something strange. Yun's bag had been abandoned on the ground. Suddenly, mysterious voices shouted at them to leave. Hak reacted quickly, swinging his weapon to clear the fog and revealed villagers hidden in the mist. The mountain people were stunned when they saw Yona's bright red hair. They asked who she was. Yona replied that she was following the guidance of a priest and searching for the 4 dragon warriors. Hearing this, the villagers revealed that this was the village of the White Dragon ones who guarded the bloodline of the White Dragon warrior. Meanwhile, Yun was trapped in a cage, worried that Yona and Hak had also been captured. Luckily, they weren't. Once Yona introduced herself, Yun was freed. Hak explained that everyone's attitude shifted once they saw Yona's red hair. The village elder apologized for treating them badly. Hak and Yun noticed that the villagers were deeply respectful of Yona's hair color. They explained that the red hair looked just like the one the first White Dragon had once sworn to protect. To them, Yona might be the person the White Dragon was waiting for. Hak asked if everyone in the village had inherited the dragon's power, but the answer was no. Only one person in the entire village had inherited the White Dragon's ability. That warrior showed up his right arm was huge and powerful, while the rest of his body was normal. The village elder had looked after him all his life, but he didn't understand the purpose of his strength. He had no idea when the person he was supposed to serve would appear. It might not even happen in his lifetime. The elder had even told him to marry and pass on the bloodline, but he hadn't bothered. Right then, the White Dragon sensed something strange. He heard that outsiders were in the village and thought enemies had arrived. He rushed out, ready to attack, but stopped in his tracks when he saw Yona. Her red hair shone in the light. Seeing her caused something deep within him to stir. A memory from his father's words returned: if the Crimson Dragon King's descendant ever appeared, the White Dragon would feel it in his blood. He would know right away, even without being told. And at that moment, the White Dragon felt it. He had no doubt this girl was the one. He bowed to Yona and accepted her as his master. The entire village followed, kneeling in front of her. Yun realized that it was Yona's red hair that caused this. It reminded them of the Crimson Dragon King. But Yona still didn't think of herself as a leader. In her eyes, she was just someone broken, depending on others to get by. Still, the White Dragon, whose blood confirmed it, Todd made his choice. He told the elder he would leave right away to follow Yona, but the elder insisted on holding a farewell feast first. At the banquet, Yun was surprised at how fast the White Dragon had agreed to join them. Meanwhile, Hak paid a visit to the White Dragon in private, hoping to ask for some supplies. But instead of food or gear, the White Dragon handed Hak a pouch of money and told him that his job was done. He could return home now. Hak wasn't having it. He snapped back that a sheltered rich boy like the White Dragon would never be able to keep Yona safe. Tension flared between them. When they met back up with Yona, the two were still arguing. Hak called the White Dragon useless. Yona asked what happened and found out about the money. Hak hadn't agreed to leave, but he still carried the pouch. The White Dragon said Hak wasn't one of the dragon warriors, so he wasn't needed. But Yona immediately rejected that idea. She said Hak was just as important to her as anyone else. The White Dragon misunderstood again. He thought Yona meant Hak was so weak that they needed extra help to protect him. Hak rolled his eyes and insulted him back, calling him a white lizard. That evening, the farewell party was held. The elder, who had taken care of white dragons for generations, finally witnessed one of them set off on his destiny. The next morning, the White Dragon left with Yona's group. The villagers watched in awe. The elder handed over supplies and said goodbye, though she was sad to no longer wake the White Dragon up every morning. Even though she was aging, she promised herself she'd live long enough to see him return. As the group continued their journey, they still had no idea where the other 3 dragon warriors were. But the White Dragon, now officially part of their group, said he could sense them. Even though he'd never met the others, there was a connection through their dragon blood. Yona then asked what his real name was. The White Dragon was surprised he hadn't used his birth name in years. It was Kija. From that point on, Hak constantly teased Kija, and the two kept butting heads. Yona had to step in to break up their arguments. She told Hak to behave and asked Kija not to take Hak's words seriously. Yuna asked Kija to focus and point in the direction of the next dragon. Kija concentrated and pointed, sure of where to go. Proudly, he said he would lead the way, and immediately fell into a hole full of giant centipedes. It became clear Kija wasn't used to the real world. Yun told him to stay behind the group from now on. Once Hak and Kija pulled themselves out of the hole, both of them sensed something nearby. Yun and Yona stayed hidden, while Hak guessed it might be Fire Tribe soldiers. But it wasn't it was just a group of bandits. Neither Hak nor Kija held back. The bandits thought they had the upper hand because of their numbers, but they were wrong. Kija used the power of his dragon arm and smashed through the attackers. Hak also jumped into the fight, not wanting to be shown up. Kija activated his dragon strength, surprising even Hak. Not to be outdone, Hak showed off his skills too. They traded sarcastic jabs even during the battle. Yona wanted to help, and Yun gave her quick advice on how to shoot. She followed his instructions and shot an arrow that hit a bandit, sneaking up on Hak. She was shocked she landed the shot and found Yun's instructions helpful. But when Yun tried shooting a bandit himself, he totally missed. Clearly, he knew theory, not action. They defeated the attackers, but the fight had taken a toll. Kija had drained too much energy from his dragon arm. Hack had reopened his old wound and passed out. Kija couldn't believe Hack had fought so hard while injured. Using the strength in his dragon arm, he carried Hack himself. That arm gave him the strength of 10 men though, only that arm was powerful. His other limbs were just average. Kija started to understand something about Yona too. She had stood tall in front of danger. She didn't scream or hide, just fought and protected Hack. She said she had already faced a night scarier than this and had nothing left to fear. Kija realized he genuinely wanted to follow her. That night, Kija was surprised the group only ate wild plants. Yona didn't complain though, since Yun's cooking was still better than Hack's. Hack woke up, and Yona offered to feed him, but Kija volunteered first. After dinner, Yuna asked about the next dragon warrior, the Blue Dragon. Kija explained that the Blue Dragon's tribe had once lived among the Earth tribe. One day, they suddenly vanished. Even though no one had seen them in years, Kija could still sense the Blue Dragon's presence. Yun figured out the general location, and they planned to visit nearby villages the next day. Kija, who had lived a life of comfort, was horrified when he learned they'd be sleeping in the forest again. The next morning, Kija looked totally drained. He hadn't slept at all and was barely holding himself together. Yun, trying to keep the group focused, reminded everyone they had to stay alert. They were getting closer to the Fire Tribe's area, so avoiding attention was important. But that was easier said than done after all. They had a girl with flaming red hair, a guy with a magical dragon arm, and a former army commander traveling together. So Yun came up with a new strategy. When they reached the next cluster of villages, Kija would use his dragon sense to check if the Blue Dragon was nearby. If he didn't feel anything, they'd move on right away without wasting time. Thanks to Hack's sharp memory of terrain, he helped rule out a bunch of areas that were old military camps, places a dragon warrior definitely wouldn't hide. Even with this shortcut, they spent the entire day looking and still found nothing. Kija kept pointing in the same direction, which made everyone wonder had the Blue Dragon already crossed the border. That night, Yona looked exhausted, and Yun handed her a special herbal drink to help her feel better. Meanwhile, Kija felt completely useless. He thought he had dragged them all on a pointless journey and failed to help the princess. He wished the Blue Dragon could somehow sense his presence and come find them instead. But then Kija heard something outside. It was Yona, still awake and practicing with her bow, even after a long day. Hack noticed Kija watching and explained that even though they were there to guard her, she still wanted to get stronger so she wouldn't have to rely on them forever. The next morning, Yona gently asked Kija if he'd gotten any sleep. She knew this kind of outdoor travel wasn't something he was used to. Slowly, Kija began to realize he truly admired Yona and that she had started to see him as someone who really mattered to her. Soon after, Yun discovered something important. There was a blank spot on the map, an area right near the border that no one had paid attention to. It looked like a smart hiding place, somewhere chosen on purpose to stay out of sight. When they arrived, the group found a hidden mountain village tucked right against the empire's edge. The villagers came out to inspect them, their faces hard to read. Kija quickly confirmed that this was the place. The Blue Dragon was definitely here, but the people in the village weren't dragon descendants. They were just a small, poor tribe that didn't get much contact with the outside world. Yona didn't want to push them or ask too many questions. She simply requested that they let them stay for one night so Hack could rest and heal. The village elder agreed but warned that the place was like a maze. If they wandered around without help, they could easily get lost. When Yona asked about the masks everyone wore, the elder explained it was a tradition. Anyone who wasn't married had to wear one. The group was shown to a quiet place to stay, but Yun decided to sneak off and explore. He wanted to find the Blue Dragon himself. They all split up to search, but every path just led to dead ends. While walking, Yun suddenly felt like someone was watching him. He panicked and told everyone they should leave before they got caught. But before they could retreat, Yona noticed something odd, a secret tunnel hidden in the shadows. Curious, she followed it alone without telling the others. As she wandered deeper, she saw a squirrel dart past and chased it without thinking. That's when she realized she was completely lost. The lights inside the tunnel went out, and everything went pitch black. A man appeared in front of her and offered to lead her out. But the deeper they walked, the more uncomfortable Yona felt. Her instincts told her something was off, so she tried to run. Just then, another masked figure suddenly showed up and rescued her from the first man. She recognized the squirrel, sitting calmly on his shoulder. It belonged to this new person. Meanwhile, Hack and the rest were frantically searching for Yona. When she was brought back, Kija immediately recognized the masked man who saved her as the Blue Dragon. Without a word, the man turned and ran away. Years ago, when the Blue Dragon had been born, the villagers placed a mask over his face right away. That was because his power came from his eyes. Anyone who looked into them could be paralyzed. But instead of respecting him, the villagers treated him like a curse. He grew up in complete isolation. Even the previous blue dragon who raised him never saw his power as a gift. He believed it was a dangerous burden and warned the younger one to never use it. He trained him in sword fighting so that he could rely on skill rather than magic. The two of them lived as outcasts. The village avoided them, and even when they defended the place from outsiders, no one thanked them. The older blue dragon grew weaker, his eyesight fading, while the younger one's powers became stronger. Eventually, the elder went blind completely. But in a strange way, he was relieved. It meant he could finally die without seeing anymore and live like a normal person before the end. To help his mentor, the younger blue dragon tied small bells to his mask. That way, the old man could find him by sound. But not long after, the elder passed away. Then one day, a large enemy group attacked. The current blue dragon, remembering his master's warnings, still chose to protect the village. He used his powers to drive the invaders away. Despite everything, Yona saw the truth. He wasn't a monster. He was a kind and gentle soul who had lived his whole life being treated like a danger. At the same time, the blue dragon himself was shaken. When he rescued Yona, something inside him stirred violently. Just like what happened with Kija, the dragon blood in his body reacted the moment he got near her. He didn't know why or what it meant, but he instinctively knew Kija was the white dragon, and for some reason, he couldn't deny the pull toward Yona. Still, he hid. He didn't want his powers to hurt anyone again. Back with the others, Kija was furious. He couldn't believe the villagers had taken Yona away, but Yoon suspected this village wasn't like Kija's hometown. Maybe the people here saw them as outsiders or even threats. Still, Yona wasn't giving up. She wanted to talk to the blue dragon again. She planned to go back into the tunnel. Kija and Yoon insisted on going with her. Hak wanted Yona to stay behind for her safety, but she insisted. She told him to stay instead, saying the villagers needed someone strong watching over them in case anything went wrong. Hak gave in but made her promise to come back safe. If she didn't, he swore he'd never leave her side again and would stick to her so closely that she'd get sick of him. He also asked Kija to protect her and stay alert in the village. The villagers were still keeping an eye on them, so Hak remained behind to make sure no one tried anything suspicious. As Yona, Kija, and Yoon headed for the tunnel, Kija suddenly sensed someone following them. He stopped and told Yoon and Yona to go on while he handled it. He confronted the villagers and asked what their intentions were. They told him that no one who entered the tunnel could be allowed to leave. Kija drew his weapon and warned that if they touched Yona, he would not hold back. Meanwhile, Yona and Yoon had already reached the place where the blue dragon was hiding. He spotted them. When Yona asked him his name, he said he didn't have one. Then he raised his sword, warning them to stay back. But his little squirrel ran to Yona and clung to her happily. Even though he had no idea who she really was, the blue dragon suddenly wanted to know her better. Yona gently asked to borrow his strength, but he replied that anyone who wanted his power was his enemy. She explained that she didn't want to use him, she just wanted to be his friend. Still, the blue dragon refused. He thought his power was too dangerous and should never be brought out into the world again, so he pushed Yona away. Yona didn't force anything. She and Yoon left quietly, but even as she walked away, she couldn't help but feel heartbroken for him. She could tell he had always longed for a friend, yet had spent his whole life pretending he didn't need one. Even though she respected his choice, it still hurt to walk away. After a while, Yona came across Kija, who was standing in front of a group of angry villagers. They were trying to get to her because she had found out about the blue dragon's so-called curse. When she asked why they treated the blue dragon like a burden instead of a blessing, they had no answer. Kija had no choice. He got ready to fight. Suddenly, the entire cave started rumbling. The walls and ceiling began to crumble. Kija jumped to shield Yona. Back at the entrance, Hak realized something was wrong. He rushed toward the tunnel, but huge boulders were blocking the way. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't break through. All he could do was dig, pray, and regret ever letting the princess come on this risky journey. Inside, Yona woke up and noticed that some villagers were still stuck there with them. Yoon panicked. They were all trapped underground, and the air would run out soon. Kija used his dragon claws to try to dig an escape path, but when the villagers saw another dragon, they backed away in fear. Yona asked again why do they see dragon powers as something to fear. The villagers finally explained. In this village, there was always one child born with the blue dragon's mark. Even if the chosen one died, another child would be born with the same power. The thought terrified the villagers. They lived in constant fear that their own child might be next. They weren't interested in using the power. They wanted to seal it away. Years ago, even as a small child, the current blue dragon had shown how dangerous his power was. He had used it to wipe out enemy soldiers. That's why the villagers locked him away, to keep that power from escaping into the world. The blue dragon suddenly stepped forward. Everyone thought he would punish them, but he didn't. His mask was knocked off, revealing a surprisingly gentle face. Even though his gaze wasn't dangerous, the villagers still panicked, terrified that just meeting his eyes would freeze them like stone. He quietly placed his mask back on. Then he picked up an axe and to attack Butt to help dig through the rocks. He told Kija that the section he was working on would lead outside quicker. Kija helped. Yona joined in, and Yoon turned to the villagers. If you want to survive, help us dig. On the other side, Hak was still digging through the rubble when some villagers arrived. They were also trying to rescue someone. Hak told them that once they were out, they owed him an explanation. Yona was growing tired. The blue dragon, after a suggestion from Kija, gently carried her to let her rest. As they walked, Yona realized how kind he really was. She opened up to him and told him about her past, how she had lived her whole life inside a palace, shielded from reality. But now, after going through so much, she had become someone new. Her experiences were proof that she had grown. Feeling inspired, she stood up and returned to digging. Beside her, the blue dragon quietly thought maybe if he stayed by her side, he could finally be free. Eventually, Hak broke through the stone wall from the outside. The moment he saw Yona, he ran to her and pulled her into a tight hug, silently wishing she'd never face danger like this again. Once they were out, Yona asked the blue dragon again, "Will you come with me?" This time, he said yes. He understood now going with her didn't mean becoming a weapon. It meant finding the freedom and purpose he had longed for. As they walked away from the village, the belt tied to his mask dropped off. He didn't pick it up. It was like letting go of everything that had chained him down. Even though he had joined the group, the blue dragon stayed quiet and distant. Kija was also completely worn out from using his powers non-stop. Worse, he said he could no longer sense where the other dragon warriors were. Yoon asked the blue dragon if he could track them the same way Kija did, but he couldn't. Kija figured the blue dragon just needed practice and offered to teach him. But instead of saying anything, the blue dragon suddenly ran off. It turned out he had only gone to the nearby river to catch fish for Kija. He wanted to help him recover, but when he came back soaking wet from the cold stream, the group lit a fire to help him warm up while Yoon grilled the fish. After dinner, the blue dragon surprised everyone. He opened his mouth and softly thanked Yona. Even more surprising, he called her by her name. No one had ever done that. Everyone else still called her princess. So the group agreed it was time to give the blue dragon a real name too. That night, Yona asked Yeon for ideas, but he told her it should be her decision. She was the one who had freed him from that lonely life. She wasn't scared of him, not even when he pointed a blade at her. That meant she had earned the right to name him. Yoon also confessed something. He used to hate nobles like Yona. He thought they were selfish, spoiled, and useless. But she had changed his view completely. For the first time, he said he wanted to stop calling her princess and start using her name. Later, Yona went to fetch water at the stream and found Hak waiting. She asked him not to call her by her name. She wanted him to be the only person who remembered her as the princess, the daughter of the king. Hak agreed. He also told her what had gone through his mind while he was digging to save her. He had never felt that desperate in his life. Yona then asked Hak to help her name the blue dragon. Hak said the name should reflect the night quiet, calm, and mysterious. As they looked at the moonlight shining on the blue dragon's face, Yona chose the name Shin. The blue dragon smiled softly. He liked it. Later that night, Shin whispered to his late predecessor, "After all these years, I've finally been given a name. I'll cherish it forever." The next morning, Yona asked Kija how he was doing. He had recovered a bit and said he could now sense where the green dragon might be. So, the group set off in that direction. This next location was much closer to the capital. Shin's enhanced vision turned out to be a big help. From far away, he could scan the road and help them avoid any threats or soldiers. Kija seemed happier too. He had made a new friend in Shin. Along the way, they passed through a broken-down village. The place had been hit hard by famine. Food and clean water were almost gone. Most of the men had been forced to join the army, leaving behind the old, the sick, and the weak to suffer. Disease spread quickly. Many couldn't leave, and most were slowly starving. The nation had turned its back on them. To Yona, the situation felt painfully familiar. It reminded Yun of where he'd grown up abandoned and ignored, while the Fire tribe focused only on building military power. They helped an old man along the road, who bitterly muttered that the last king had been terrible. He said the kingdom had fallen apart under his rule, and that's why the tribes were scattered and the people were suffering. He just hoped the new king would be better. As the group continued forward, Yona told them she was going to use the restroom, but really, she just wanted to be alone. Yun admitted that even he had never looked up to the former king. The world would probably always remember him as someone foolish, a ruler who dreamed of peace in a world that only respected strength. Still, Hak said he respected the king more than anyone else. Even if the world had forgotten him, Hak hadn't. Now, all Yona had left was the pride of being his daughter. That thought made her cry quietly nearby. Shin's little squirrel came over and gently nuzzled her, trying to cheer her up. That night, Yona got up again to practice archery. She was determined to become strong enough to protect the people she loved. Meanwhile, far away, Suwon arrived at the Earth tribe's territory. The tribe's leader was feeling discouraged. His lands were drying up, merchants had stopped visiting, and his strength had faded over the years. He blamed it on the past king's peaceful reign, which had ended the wars that had once kept their army strong. When Su-won showed up, the chief greeted him with caution. He remembered Su-won's father, a man he had deeply respected. He was still unsure if Su-won had inherited any of his greatness. Su-won brought the Sky Tribe's chief with him. These two leaders were complete opposites and instantly clashed the moment they met. The Earth Tribe leader noticed how soft Su-won still looked like someone who had never fought a real battle. Unlike his father, Su-won didn't seem like a warrior. Trying to judge his strength, the chief decided to take him on a tour. During it, he was told that the village's mine had collapsed again. The chief's assistant quietly asked Su-won why he had really come. Surely, he had a motive. But Su-won only smiled and said he was there for sightseeing. The Earth Tribe leader didn't buy it. He reminded Su-won of his earlier promise to rebuild the kingdom. From what he saw, Su-won didn't seem ready to handle that kind of burden. If he ever thought Su-won was leading the country to ruin, he'd be the first to rebel. Su-won didn't get angry. He accepted the warning. Later, he noticed a strange stone shrine in the village and asked about it. The chief said it was just a belief, nothing serious. He excused himself and told Su-won to ask his servant if he needed anything. The servant explained that the chief wasn't trying to be disrespectful, he had just lost his sense of purpose. Peace had made him restless, and he no longer felt useful. He had spent years preparing for battle, only for the war to end. Su-won understood. The Earth Tribe leader still held influence, and Su-won had just come up with a plan. Soon after, one of the Earth Tribe servants came running in, excitedly telling the chief that a fight was about to break out. The chief rushed to see Su-won, thinking war had finally come, but it turned out to be a misunderstanding. Su-won was just planning a mock battle, part of a festival he wanted to host. He invited the locals to join for fun. The idea didn't sit well with either the Earth or Sky Tribe leaders. They thought Su-won was ignoring the country's serious problems just to play games, and feared he might end up being even worse than the last king. Still, the festival went ahead. The Earth Tribe chief was annoyed by the outfit Su-won gave him. It was stiff and awkward, but since his wife picked it out, he had no choice but to wear it. He also found out that his wife had become close to Su-won after Su-won complimented the tea she brewed. As the crowd gathered, the chief began to wonder if this event had a deeper purpose. Su-won explained the rules of the mock battle. It was a game of strategy. Each fighter wore a bowl on their head. Breaking an opponent's bowl earned points depending on their class: king, noble, or commoner. Each class had limits. The king could strike nobles but not commoners. Nobles could attack commoners but not kings. And commoners could aim for the king but not nobles. If someone's bowl was broken, they were out, but if a teammate gave them a replacement, they could return to the game. The side that lost all their bowls first would lose. The Earth Tribe chief wasn't sure Su-won could even fight. Sure, he was friends with the famous hack, but Su-won looked like a weak little squirrel. The Sky Tribe chief pointed out that the Earth chief always underestimated people who didn't look tough. When the battle started, Su-won boldly stepped forward to face the Earth chief, then turned and ran, letting his soldiers go first. Ironically, those soldiers were Earth Tribe men who had been forced to switch sides just to fill Su-won's team. At first, they considered throwing the match, but that would be an insult to their chief's pride, so they decided to take it seriously and give it their all. Since the chief couldn't attack commoners, he had to wait for one of his nobles to step in. When they did, another noble on Su-won's team took them down. Once he had permission to fight nobles, the chief moved fast, knocking down opponents one after another. Meanwhile, Su-won was being chased by a pack of commoners from the other team. The Earth Chief soon ended up facing off against the Sky Tribe Chief. Since the Sky Chief was a noble, the Earth Chief had the upper hand, although the Sky Chief could still defend himself as long as his bowl didn't break. Then, Su-won managed to dodge the group chasing him. They ended up accidentally breaking each other's bowls. He rushed in to rescue his fallen teammates, which gave his team a numbers advantage but also made it easier for the enemy to rack up points by breaking their bowls again. The Earth Chief rushed at Su-won, but just then, a wooden sword flew toward him. Su-won quickly deflected it, and the chief realized something: Su-won wasn't weak at all. He was just hiding his skill behind luck. The chief's opinion of Su-won started to shift. He learned that the wind and smoke that had scattered his formation weren't random, it was part of Su-won's plan. The soldiers from his own tribe who had joined Su-won confirmed it. Su-won had predicted the weather and used it to break their formation. The chief understood now Su-won had carefully picked the most loyal and controllable soldiers for his team, then led them in a battle he fully intended to lose, all while showing his true power. Eventually, the Earth Tribe soldiers were defeated, and the chief stood alone. Looking at Su-won now, he no longer saw a squirrel. He saw a hawk ready to strike. Su-won offered the chief a chance to keep fighting by reviving his teammates, but the chief refused. He said on a real battlefield, there were no second chances. Even if he was outnumbered 1,000 to 1, he would keep fighting. He and Su-won clashed. During the duel, Su-won tripped, giving the chief just enough time to break the bowl on his head and earn a narrow win. A few days later, the Earth Tribe chief still didn't understand why Su-won had come until his wife told him something shocking. The tea she had made was now being sold in foreign lands. Merchants had brought it overseas, and now the demand was too high to keep up. Suwon told her to limit its supply to make it a rare and valuable specialty of the region. Then, an elder working at the mine arrived with more news. The mine needed more workers. The worthless stones they used to throw away had been turned into jewelry, including the very accessories the chief wore during the festival. The chief finally realized everything Suwon had done for them, but by the time he understood, Suwon had already left. Suwon's true goal was simply one of the Earth tribe's strength on his side. If war broke out, their strong morale and soldiers would be essential. Now the chief no longer doubted Suwon. In fact, he believed Suwon had even more potential than his legendary father. Meanwhile, Yona's group had arrived at a port city. Yun believed that the Green Dragon was somewhere nearby. Hak had been here before, and Kija was feeling exhausted. To avoid trouble, Hak volunteered to scout the city alone. Yona offered to join him, but Hak stopped her. She hadn't been resting properly lately and needed sleep. He gave his weapons to Yun and slipped into the city. The city had changed. It felt dead and hollow. Some thuggish soldiers were bullying the locals. As Hak prepared to step in, a green-haired young man joined him. Together, they helped a girl escape from the thugs and then fought off the soldiers, eventually losing them in the back streets. Suddenly, the green-haired guy handed the girl over to Hak and vanished. He had urgent business. He returned to a docked ship, where a female captain waited. She could already tell he'd gotten into trouble again, but he had also sensed the presence of the white and blue dragons nearby. That night, Hak returned to the group, and they planned to go shopping in the city the next day. But Shin-Ah and Kija had already picked up on the Green Dragon's location. It was coming from a ship out in the harbor. The next morning, Shin-Ah and Kija led the group toward the ship, but the Green Dragon's presence suddenly disappeared. That's because he had already reunited with Hak earlier in the city. The Green Dragon explained that he was being followed and needed Hak's help. They went to a tavern to talk. Hak asked why the city felt so empty. The Green Dragon explained that a powerful lord had taken over and ruined the place. Now the citizens were suffering under his rule. As a free spirit, the Green Dragon wanted to fight back. But before Hak could explain this to Yona, she and Yoon showed up and overheard everything. The Green Dragon quietly slipped away again. Hak explained that the Green Dragon had felt something strange. Being near the White Dragon's aura stirred up conflicted feelings. He'd always hated the idea of destiny and didn't want to be bound by a mission to serve someone. Suddenly, they had to flee from soldiers. Along the way, they met the same girl they saved before. She led them to the place where she worked, and Hak finally told the group what was happening. The town was under the control of a greedy lord. His soldiers bullied innocent people, burned shops, kidnapped women, and demanded absurd taxes from anyone trying to do business. That's why the marketplace had completely collapsed. Yona finally understood why all the townspeople wore fake smiles. When Yoon asked about pirates, the girl said that pirates never hurt regular citizens, they only stole from the Lord's supply ships. That night, the Green Dragon snuck onto one of the Lord's cargo vessels. He discovered it was being used to smuggle illegal drugs. Then, his pirate crew appeared. They stormed the ship. The Green Dragon's special power, his legs let him leap incredibly high, which made him a fearsome fighter. The pirates quickly overpowered the enemy and set the ship on fire. Their captain had one rule: no killing. They only fought when they had a clear advantage. Later, the captain noticed the Green Dragon was unusually quiet. He admitted that fighting beside Hak had made him feel something different. Even though people knew about his powers, they didn't reject him. He treasured the pirate crew deeply. He had left his village 13 years ago to find freedom, and these people had become his family. The captain was now planning a full assault on the corrupt lord and needed more powerful allies. She didn't want any more of her crew or children to die. Since the Green Dragon had already met Hak, she asked him to bring Hak to her. The Green Dragon agreed, but he knew convincing Hak wouldn't be easy after all. Hak already had someone he was loyal to. And that's where this video ends. If you made it this far and want to see what would happen next, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment part 2. Until next time.